So say we wanted, let's make up a new, I believe this is Lecture D maybe?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. We're going to veer off on the topic of for loops. What are for loops? For loops are just a statement that sets up stepping through a series of values. You can have numeric for loops, or you can have other kinds of for loops. Let's just do a numeric for loop first. Count from 1 to 10. That's what we're going to do. Alrighty, so our syntax in this language for a numeric integer for loop is for, and then variable name. The variable name can be anything, so I'm just going to call it x. X space, in, the word in, space, range, and then inside the parentheses of the range function, we're going to put in some values that specify where to start and where to stop. We want it to start at 1. We want it to stop at 10, so we're going to put 11. And you're going, why? Why don't I put 10 there? Well, this specifies 1 past the point. We haven't even talked about while loops yet, and we're using for loops, but this is just like, don't do this, while x is less than 11. If you understand what while x less than 11 means, that's why we have 11 here and here as well. So this specifies the starting point, and this specifies 1 past the ending point. So after any time you have an if statement or a for statement or a while statement or a def statement, you have to have a colon to go to the next line. And that starts the tabbing over. And then let's just print out x. So on the next line, print parentheses x into parentheses. So that's going to print out the numbers 1 to 10. All right, and it did it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's an optional third parameter that you can put here that'll tell it how many to skip each time. You want it to count from 2 to 20 by 2s, then you'd make that right a 2. But the optional third parameter tells it how much to go up by, the so-called step, right? How much it's going to increase every time. So this one's going up just by 1 each time. So to make that absolutely clear, we could have put a comma 1 there. And the comma 1 doesn't change its behavior because it defaults it to 1 anyways. But it's going to print from 1 to 10, skipping by 1s. If we change that to a 2, it's going to count from 1 to 10 by 2s. But that means it's going to be 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Right? Right, and so that's what we got. And if we change this to a 3, then it's going to add 3 to it each time. So it's going to start at 1, plus 3 is 4, plus 3 is 7, plus 3 is 10. Like that. So that's what that third parameter means. So count from 1 up to, but not including, 11, stepping by 1. That's what that means. You can also put in a negative step. Right, you could count down. You could start at 100 and, go down to 1 or whatever. So that's a numeric range. But that's not the only kind of for loop you might be interested in. What if you have a series of words and you want to step through all the words? You have a so-called list of words. Well, let's declare a list. Doesn't have to be words. It could be a series of anything. It's just going to be some values tucked between curly braces, like this. L, that's just my favorite variable name for a list, equals curly braces, and I'm going to type in some numbers. Doesn't matter what the numbers are. Don't take the time to type in my numbers. Just type in a whole bunch of numbers separated by commas. Quite often I just put 8675309 to like prove the point or whatever. Why not do that instead? Something a little more sensical. 8675309. And wouldn't it have been nice if I'd put commas rather than dots? Okay. Now I want to step through those. For x space in space. Now I'm not going to use a range statement. I'm going to use this variable name because I want to step through all the items in the list. And don't panic, gang. This is like chapter 5 and we're already leaping into it. So if some of this isn't making sense to you because you haven't had the prior programming experience for it to make sense, that's okay. Yes, sir.
Are you recording?
I certainly hope so. Oh, yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So here we go. And we're just going to print parentheses x again. And now it's going to print out 8675309. So this is a list. L is a list of values. The curly braces declare a list. So now it should count from 1 to 10, but then it should also print out 8675309. And there we go. And remember, variable names are just for our purpose. We could call these anything that we wanted, right? Didn't have to be capital L. I could have called this like phone number, right? Phone equals, and then as long as I use that in all the places that it's appropriate, phone equals that for X and phone do that, it'll work. Or if I changed X here and changed X here as well, it would work just fine. Like for digit in phone, print the digit. So what if you wanted to step through a string, like a password, to inspect each character in the password separately? Well, let's create a string that has our data in it. Password equals, and then quote, I don't know, what's my favorite password? It's Pikachu, exclamation mark, end quote. I need to inspect every character of it. For space, and again, I could call it X, or I could call it letter, or Tony, or whatever. It's a character in the password, so I'm going to type in CHAR for character. For char in password, colon. Print out that character. Print, parentheses, CHAR in parentheses. When you run it, it's going to print out Pikachu, or whatever you put between the quotes. All right, and it did, right? So, 3 different kinds, well, 2 in particular, but 2 different kinds of for loops. One does counting, counts through a range. The other counts through a list or a string, pulling out each item. So in each iteration of it, the digit will be an 8, and then a 6, and then a 7, and a 5, and a 3, and an 0, and a 9. And here, every character is going to be repeated in turn. P and an I and a K and an H. So what if you wanted to like count the number of uppercase letters versus the number of lowercase letters? Well, we could do that. let me make sure I have this correct syntax first, because I always botch this when I walk out of C# and then start doing it in Python. Is uppercase in Python. Is uppercase Python. Okay, it's dot is upper. So if that character is an uppercase letter, we want to do something. We might want to count the number of uppercase letters. So I'm going to make two variables, one called uppers and one called lowers. And we're going to add one to it each time it's an uppercase letter. And we're going to add one to it each time it's a lowercase letter. So upper equals 0, lower equals 0. And we put that before our for loop, so that inside our for loop we can do this. If char dot is upper, parentheses in parentheses, colon. Let's print out that it's uppercase. Print char comma quote is upper, end quote in parentheses, and then add one to our upper counter. Upper plus equals 1. With no space between the plus and the equal. This just adds 1 to the value of upper. It's the same as writing upper equals upper plus 1. Now let's check for lowercase letters. So I'm going to do the same thing, but instead of using is upper, it's going to be is lower. So if char dot is lower, parentheses in parentheses, colon, print parentheses, char comma quote is lower, end quote in parentheses. And so we're going to add on to the lowercase count. Lower plus equals 1. And that's the end of our loop, although we could keep going. If we wanted to count the number of digits, we could do that. Figuring out if it's a punctuation character is a little bit longer. I'm not going to show is the digits, but I'll just make a comment here. You could use is digit to count the number of digits, to count whether it's a special character and like a punctuation. A little bit different. Let me think how you would do that. If is all num equals capital FALSE colon, and I did that wrong. If char dot is ALNUM, and I'll explain what that means in a minute, parentheses in parentheses, equals false, then it's a punctuation. Print parentheses char comma quote is punctuation. It's not strictly true because it would count a space as a punctuation, but it's close enough. I don't even have a counter for punctuation yet, right? So maybe I better go and add a counter up here so that I can increment it down here. So to do that, I'd have to go and add a third variable to my counters. How about PUNCT equals 0, counting the punctuations. So, if it is not alnum, what does alnum mean? Alphanumeric. Alpha being an alphabet letter, NUM meaning numeric, a digit. So if it's not an alphabet letter and it's not a digit, then we're going to say it's punctuation. Now, like I said, this doesn't actually handle spaces. We could tack that on, but I don't want to go even further off the map than we already are. So, lined up with this print statement, if it is punctuation, we're going to add onto our punct variable, PUNCT plus equals 1. All right, now we have processed that password and we've counted the number of uppercase letters, the number of lowercase letters, and the number of punctuation in it. And if you wanted to add one for digits as well, you would just use char.isDigit and you would be able to add up the numbers. All right, let's print out our results. Let's print out the values of uppercase, lowercase, and punctuation. Print, parentheses, quote, uppercase space count, end quote, comma, upper, in parentheses. And I'm just going to do the same thing for lowercase and for punctuation. Print, parentheses, quote, lowercase count, end quote, comma, lower, parentheses, and parentheses. And lastly, print, parentheses, quote, punctuation count, end quote, comma, punct. Now I should have typed a lot without running it to make sure that it wasn't going to crash, so I hope I don't have any syntax errors, but I can't guarantee that's the case. All right, and so it started stepping through Pikachu. P is uppercase, I is lowercase, K is lower, A is lower, C is lower, H is lower, U is lower, and exclamation mark is punctuation. And if we threw in some numbers, like Pikachu 1, 2, 3, it wouldn't know what to do with them. They would not add onto our counters at all, right? Because we aren't using isDigit yet. But you could throw that in if you wanted to. And then you could validate that password against your rules. Your password must contain at least one uppercase letter, one lowercase letter, have at least one punctuation and one digit, right? You could use these variables and set up some if statements to do that. What if we needed to know the length of the string? That'd be pretty easy to do. Why don't we get the length of the password right here so that we could print it out? length equals len parentheses password in parentheses. Then we could do something with it, right? If the length is less than 10, yell at them, tell them it's not a good password or whatever. Let's tack on a print statement for that too. Password length, end quote, comma, length. So this is a pretty good counter. It's not handling digits. That's easy to add, right? You just have to copy and paste, 3 lines and then change is lower to isDigit and make your appropriate changes like that. You really don't need to print these things out. You could delete all the print statements once you're happy with the way it works. If you really want this to handle skipping spaces, then text me and I'll show you the line of code that would make it skip spaces as well. What if we wanted to see if there was a space in the password? And like I said, we're going way off a field. Those of y'all who have had fundamentals, this is going to look familiar. Hopefully this stuff is not too, far off what you did in fundamentals. But, we've slept since then. It's been the summer and stuff like that. And if you haven't, then this is new. What if I wanted to see if there was a 2 in my password or a 23 in my password? That would look something like this. If space, quote, 23, end quote, space, in, the word in, space, password, colon, or heck, let's check for spaces. And that vertical bar, by the way, was not supposed to be there. I'm taking out that 2, 3, and I'm putting a space in there instead. If space, if quote, space, end quote, in password, print, parentheses, quote, no spaces allowed, end quote, in parentheses, semicolon. This is how you check to see if something is in a list or a string. If we wanted to see if the number 7 was in 8675309, we could do if 7 in phone, right? Because that was our phone number variable. All right. I've typed a lot. I better pause and make sure that everybody's got a chance to catch up. Can't get the whole thing on one screen, sorry about that. But to start it off, this is what it looked like at the beginning, these 4 lines. Kind of also doing this for the people watching at home. And then we had our for loop. It's never a bad idea to end a loop or an if statement with a little comment saying what we're doing. So I'm going to add above my link statement end for, not necessary, just indicates that it's the end of the for loop. And then we have our print statements, where we calculated the length and we printed out our counters. Then, just to demonstrate something, to check to see if something was included inside the password string, we demonstrated the if in syntax. So just to demonstrate the concept a little bit more for 3 more minutes before we hit the chapter again, I'm going to modify the phone number loop to count the number of even digits in it. The way you check to see if something is even is you divide it by 2, and if there's a remainder, then it's not even. There's a mathematical symbol for remainder called modulus. So we're going to use that. But let's do evens equals 0. We're going to count the number of even digits. And then maybe odds equals 0. Count the number of even digits and odd digits. So inside the for loop, we're going to do if digit, and now we're going to divide it by 2 and check the remainder. So if digit %2, that stands for modulus, which means remainder when divided by 2. So if digit %2 equals 0, colon, and again, don't panic if this is not making sense. We are ahead. I don't mind showing y'all something, and then when we get back to it, it'll stick in your head immediately because you've seen it before. So if you divide something by 2 and the result is 0, or the remainder is 0, you know it's an even number. So evens plus equals 1. Else, colon, odds plus equals 1. Now you got to make sure that your tabbing is exact. Right, that's got 1 tab in front of it. That's got 2 tabs in front of it. And then else has got 1 tab in front of it. And odds has got 2 tabs in front of it. And we can print those values out. Right? Print, parentheses, quote, even numbers, end quote, comma, evens. And the same thing for the odd numbers. Print, parentheses, quote, odd numbers, end quote, comma, odds. So some of the things to note about this code. Notice that every time you have a colon, you start indenting by 1. That indentation is very important in this language. You may have used languages where you marked off code with curly braces. You don't get that in this language, so the indentation are the only things that tell it where things are. Everything that is indented under a line like that is called a block. This is a block of code that's part of the for loop. This is a block of code that's part of that for loop. This single line here is a block of code that's part of the if statement. And this single line here is a block of code that's part of that else. Now, last time we defined a function called main, and so everything was a block of code under the main method, the main function. All right, going back to our PowerPoint. Looks like we'd hit the summary, so let's go to the next chapter. Should always log in before I turn the recorder on, because if I accidentally type my password where you can see it, I have to go and change 1,000,000 passwords. Do I really want to do that? Well, sure, I don't know what that is, but why not? Oh, you're not going to start doing this again like it did last week. I know what happened. I forgot to reboot the machine after. Looks like it's working. Good, yeah.
You're supposed to have 2 equal signs.
Yeah, I need to do one more walkabout. I know people were still typing them in. Just a second. As soon as I bring up the PowerPoint, I'll.
Yeah.
Who knew I would be using Edge on purpose? So y'all doing okay? Is everybody have all the typo sticks?
I have a syntax error. I'm not really 100% certain why, though. Maybe you can tell me why.
2 equals there, not 1.
Oh, 2.
And I will go up and tell everybody that.
Okay.
Not surprised.
I've only been printing 9 that I have printed. I caught the 2 sign, but I didn't catch why it didn't.
Well, it says for digit and phone print X. Let's make it say for digit and phone print digit.
Oh, oops. Yeah, it's probably.
Oh, what awesome editor are you using? This is cool.
Oh, it's a called it's included in Anaconda, which is all the
Okay, I need to
programming
install
pack.
it. I need to install it. Okay, that should take care of it.
I have another one. So
Yeah.
you might know. It says something's wrong with this right here.
Uppercase F.
Uppercase F.
You're not expected to know that. Because in every other language, it's a lowercase.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all right. Go up here, and we're going to need a variable that says PUNCT equals 0. Just need to add one more there.
Oh
So-
yeah. Because it has no clue what it's counting, does it?
Right.
Okay.
So see where it says 4x.
Oh, the length is not defined. I'm not in the
Yeah,
same
just
thing.
have it there.
Oh yeah.
Yep. It is way easy to see someone else's typos than it is to spot
There it
your own.
goes. Wow, boy, through things.
I got it. He did the same thing as in the code.
I got another one.
I got another.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, there's a considerable amount that you're not going to be able to type in, so I'm going to print it out for you.
Mostly you're supposed to have the digit isn't defined by this thing. Let's see. Nope. It's all undefined. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
it's basically
So I never ran it, and so you did that for everybody? Is that what we're saying? All righty. All right, guys, the recorder was off for a moment. What we demonstrated was using isDigit, and I think we did get this on the recorder. But if we didn't, demonstrating using isDigit to validate your input. And then we demonstrated using try except to handle runtime errors. And that is fairly sophisticated programming that I'm not really expecting us to use at this point in time, so I don't mind just scrolling past it and talking about this point. Getting back into the chapter. Every variable has a data type, a name, and a value. So if we have this, name equals, quote, Joe. Its type is string. The name of the variable is name, and the value is Joe. Say we have another one. Radius equals 3.2, 3.3. Its type, it's a floating point number. It's a floating point number. It's a number with a decimal point, so that means its type is float. Its name is radius, and its value is 3.3. Then there is something called a literal. A literal isn't a variable. It's a number or string that's coded directly into the program. That is literally coded directly into the program. The user can't change it if they don't have the source code. This word Joe is literally coded into the program. It is a literal. Way up higher where we had Pikachu and 8675309, those are also literals. Right? Everything green here is a literal. All of these numbers are literals. We don't usually care about calling them that. But it's different than a variable because its value is fixed. There's no way that the number 3.3 is going to magically mean anything other than 3.3 unless somebody comes in and has a source code and modifies it. That's also called hard coding. 3.3 is hard coded into the program. Hard coded because it can't change unless somebody comes in and edits it. Now, if we let the user type in something, like where we asked them for their name or whatever, then it would no longer be hard coded. It'd be user input, right? But I hard coded the name to Joe. But I could ask them for input instead. You know, I'd do name equals input and let them type it in. So our examples. They're saying they're using the term real numbers rather than floats. So if you're a math major, you probably like the term real numbers. Real meaning it's got a decimal point in it, right? 0.333, 3.146. Whereas integers are whole numbers. And then the character strings are the things between quotes. There are two kinds of strings. No, there's more than that. There's three ways that you could declare a string. You could do this, S equals, and then you could use a single quote, an apostrophe, hello, end apostrophe. You could do that. Or you can use double quotes, S equals double quote, hello, end quote. There's no difference between using those. Just pick one or the other and stick with it. You'll see me always use double quotes though, because that's how C and C++ and Java and a whole bunch of other languages do it. And then there's a third kind, like lyric equals quote, 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 hit enter. I love, hit enter. Rock and roll, hit enter. Put another dime, hit enter, in the jukebox baby. End quote, end quote, end quote. This is a multi-line quote. To do a multi-line quote, you have to use the triple quotes. You can't just start off a multi-line quote with a single quote or a single apostrophe. Now if we print that lyric out, print parentheses lyric in parentheses, it's going to print, I love rock and roll, put another dime in a jukebox baby. And I have to answer all these other questions. And so it did, right? So that's a multi-line quote. Usually I just use those for comments, right? If I'm going to type in a bunch of text, you know, blah, 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 blah. That's what I've been using triple quotes for most of the time. So you use triple quotes for multi-line paragraphs. Okay, suppose you didn't want to put the term I love rock and roll, put another dime in a jukebox baby, making it span multiple lines like that. You could have done it like this. Lyric equals single or double quote, I love, And now I'm going to use the backslash, which is not the one underneath the question mark. The one under the question mark is a forward slash. So I'm going to use the other slash, the one next to the quote or wherever it is on your keyboard. It's on a different place in this keyboard than it was on the one I was just sitting at minutes ago. Backslash in means new line. I love rocks, backslash in, rock, oh come on. Backslash, told you it was in a different place. Backslash in, rock and roll, backslash in. But hip hop is also backslash in way cool. End quote. These backslash ins are taking the place of hitting the enter key. So if I print it out, I'm going to just do another print statement. Print parentheses lyric in parentheses. It's going to do I love and then on one line, rock and roll on another line, but hip hop is also on another line and a way cool on the last line. And there we go. So the reason I'm showing this is because most languages don't support this. You're not going to see that in C++ or C# or Java or whatever, the ability to embed multiple lines like that after a triple quote. Usually you'll see it like this. And if you are going to put multiple lines of text into a single string, then you need them broken up by their lines. Then you usually use what's known as the new line character, the backslash in. There are other special characters besides backslash in. There's also one that means tab. Print, parentheses, quote, 1 backslash T, 2, 3, 4 backslash T, 5, 6, 7, end quote, in parentheses. And we're just going to see that those backslash T's got turned into tabs. Right. So it put it at column 9, and then it put this in column, 16 or whatever, tabbing it out to 8 each time. That takes up 8 characters. That takes 8 characters, just like you were hitting tab on the keyboard. And there are other ones still, but backslash T and backslash in are important ones. Backslash in means new line, and backslash T means tab. Here's another one that means backspace. You put in the word Fred and then you print out 4 backslash B's, it would erase all the way back over Fred, right? Because Fred is 4 letters long. It's like hitting the backspace 4 times. To print out a backslash itself, if backslash always does something weird and special, then if you actually wanted to treat it like a backslash, you just use 2 slashes. And then if you want to put in a single quote, you use backslash single quote, and if you want to put in a double quote, you use backslash double quote. So you can join 2 or more strings to form a new string using the plus sign. Hi there kin. If we printed that out, it would print hi there kin. That's called concatenation. So concatenation means using the plus sign to combine strings like this. Name equals Fred, end quote, plus quote, space, quote, plus quote, Quimby, end quote, like that. And then if we print out the name, print parentheses name, it's going to print out Fred Quimby. Make sure that's the case. All right, and it did. That's concatenation.
Why would you do that?
You may be getting separate pieces of, yeah. Why in the world did I just not say name equals Fred Quimby? Right, that's kind of stupid. But you filled out forms before where enter your first name and then enter your last name on those separate fields. But then when you're going to write it out to a database or print it on a mailing label or something, you want them right next to each other. So yeah, that's just how you combine data. Is just going to be doing like we did that I Love Rock and Roll business. So write a script that will print out a verse from a song or a poem or a speech or whatever you want, I don't care, that spans multiple lines, 4 lines or whatever. So do it 2 ways. Oh, we didn't even talk about that way. Multiple print statements. There's one more way of printing data that goes across multiple lines. Here's one way, right? Here's another way. So let's demonstrate all 3 ways. Print parentheses quote quote quote. This spans multiple lines. And then end quote, end quote, end quote, parentheses. That's one way to do it. Or you could do this. Print parentheses quote this end quote. Wait. I want to make it exactly like the other one. This space spans end quote in parentheses. Print parentheses quote multiple end quote in parentheses. Print parentheses quote lines end quote in parentheses. Either way works, right? Or you could have done it in one line. Good old \n. Print parentheses quote this spans \n multiple \n lines end quote in parentheses. 3 different ways of doing it. So part of your assignment is just going to be to come up with some. You don't have to make it like an entire Wu-Tang Clan song with 5,000 lines, right? Just 4 lines of something. I'm going to go back to the screen. I realize that not everybody may be caught up, but I want to get this done so that we can make the Dropbox and stuff like that, and we never can go back for it. Okay. And then part B, print out your whole name with each word separated by tabs, right? So you're just going to put \T. So if your name is, I don't know Tony Stark's middle name, but I'm going to make one up, right? Print parentheses quote Tony \T. What's his middle name going to be? Pardon? Gertrude. \T Stark. End quote in parentheses. Right, and then when it prints it out, it's going to try to tab it out. And let's see if there was any more of that one written up. I don't think so. Let's see if it makes sense to talk about homework 3. Yeah, where'd homework 1's box go? These are out of order. Did we not have a homework 1? Did we jump straight from 0 to...
I think I saw a scroll up. Yeah.
Ah, it's in the wrong place, that's why. Yeah, why don't we fix that? Thanks. So we've done the rectangle assignment. Let's just stop at that one. I think that's adequate. Very short assignment, but that's okay. We'll get to do more later. All right. I'm going to make a Dropbox for this, and then if we need typo correction and stuff like that, then those who need it, we can hang out after that. Are there any questions over what we covered so far? Nope. All right. Make a Dropbox for Lecture D.